Hello and welcome to this week's bonus episode of Planet Critical, the podcast for a world in crisis. My name is Rachel Donald. I'm a climate corruption journalist and your host. Last week I spoke with John Alexander. John is a former ad man who jumped ship to focus on narrative. He runs a boutique consultancy that advises people about how to retell their story, the story of their home, of their community, how to create new stories that will essentially encourage the paradigm shift that we need in order to create a better future for everyone. He's also the author of Citizens, which is a fantastic book that lays out the different paradigms that we've experienced throughout human history. So subject, when we were all subjects of kings; consumer, which is the paradigm that we're in now, which focuses on individuality. And he says that we need to move towards the paradigm of citizens, i.e., collectivism, community, people helping one another. And he was encouraged to do that after seeing how the UK responded to the COVID pandemic. The government didn't do so well, but communities all around the island, the nation, propped each other up and helped one another out. The thing that I want to touch on is the importance of just beginning. And I think we talk about this around 3/4 of the way through the episode. We talk about sort of the impediments to system change, the fact that people think they need to figure out the entire system before they begin, the fact that people think they have to names, or the fact that essentially we just don't really understand how social evolution works. Evolution works with a thing becoming more things and more things and more things over time as you get more information. Systems do not just come into being, they are created over time and gradually. And John was saying the most important thing about creating a new story and taking action is just beginning, and you will figure more things out as they come. He gives the wonderful example of Taiwan, how Taiwan in 2012 was like a classic consumerist society paradigm, and how now they have one of the most sort of participatory, democratic world. The most important thing to remember in all of this is that people are afraid of change, right? And they're afraid of change because they want certainty of what the new world is going to look like before they give themselves to, changing it. And that's understandable. You want to know what the house looks like before you move in. You want to have an idea of where you're going. But I think that is born from an understanding of the paradigm that we currently live in, rather than what the next paradigm would actually look like. And what I mean by that is that right now you kind of roll the dice by voting for somebody and hoping that they will stick to their mandate and not break the law. And if they don't, it turns out there's actually not very much that you can do. So you're rolling your dice with the future, and you have very little agency over what happens, barring your vote every 4 or 5 years, which it turns out actually doesn't really mean anything at all, because the politicians will just do whatever they want to do anyway. That sounds quite extreme, but we're really seeing a lot of that right now in the UK with the leadership race and with Starmer breaking his mandate, etc. I think what is so important to remember about, this narrative of building a new future together, using the best of all of us to do better, is that it is less scary. The future will be uncertain, but we will get there. It's a far less scary proposition because you will be an agent in that. It is less likely to go wrong because you will equally be doing what you can to make it right. And this is why it's so important to remember about systems and creating new systems. You don't start with a fully formed system. You start at the beginning and a system emerges. And under a new system, citizens will be different, people will be different, communities will be different. It's not that there will be a new system and the exact same rules will apply. The world will look fundamentally different. And so rather than thinking about new systems, we need to start with, how do you create new components? And then the new system will follow. What does a new component mean? It could look like anything from a community garden project to a local council allowing for a wee citizens' assembly to help make decisions. There's a number of projects that John mentions throughout the episode, and I highly suggest you all go and have a look at them. They're all very, very, very exciting. But the idea is, if we highlight enough, if we create enough of these little components, and then we highlight them and create networks between them, then a system is becoming in and of itself. Even the idea of creating a whole new system kind of falls into the hero narrative, the hero complex that John mentions throughout the episode, and even the consumerist thing that, we are individuals and only work best as individuals. The idea of a perfect future being born in the head of one person who can communicate this fully expressed system and then have it trickle down to everybody else falls into the exact same paradigm as everything that has come before, from royal sovereignty to authoritarian governments to, this consumer democracy when you choose between two parties. And what is so interesting when you think about ecosystems, ecological ecosystems, natural ecosystems, is that we all know that the more diverse an ecosystem is, the more resilient it is. So the more brains that we have thinking about the problem of how do we create a better society and trying different things, adapting different things, evolving different parts, and the more nodes in this network of a system, i.e. the more localized the system is as part of a bigger infrastructure or network. The system is local, but the network is national or global, say, the more resilient it will be, the better it will face the challenges of the future, because there will be challenges in the future. Another really important thing to remember is what John said about cynicism. He said he'd read a piece of research recently that said that cynical people appear more intelligent to their peers. So it's very attractive to pick apart a positive idea, and it makes you appear more intelligent to the people around you. That is another narrative that we have to change. We have to say that actually picking something apart is really, really easy because it's merely destructive. It's one form of critical thinking. A much harder form of critical thinking is actually creating something new. We also need to tie that into hope and this understanding that, like, our fundamental human constitution is hopeful. And so we're almost betraying our better natures by being cynical, by being negative, by casting humanity as a bacteria or as a plague that needs to be wiped off the face of the earth. It's harder to be creative than it is destructive, but it's also more natural for us to be hopeful than pessimistic. And that is the story that we need to tell ourselves so that we can better engage with one another, to retell the story of what kind of people we want to be, what world we want to live in, and then take actions aligned with the values of those stories and make it happen. And if we all start trying to make it happen little by little together, it will happen. It will become. You want to know what the word become is? I looked at the etymology of it around like 2 o'clock in the morning a few weeks ago, because sometimes the mood hits you. The word become means to, like, the etymology of it is to move closer to. It's not to actually be the thing. It is to move closer to being the thing. Move closer to the thing. That is becoming. If you want to become a better person, if you want a system to become something better, if you want a community to become something, the whole point is taking initial steps and getting closer and closer and closer to what it could be. And eventually you will arrive. You never start at the end, you start at the beginning. And that is such an important message. That is the key takeaway, I think, from speaking with John. There was so much he had to say in the research of narrative and storytelling and how important it is. But just that, we have the agency to begin, and so we must. And in beginning, we are becoming. And in becoming, eventually we will be something better together. Thank you everyone for tuning in and watching this episode. If you're new to the channel, remember to subscribe. You can also subscribe over at planetcritical.com. And if you want to support the podcast, you can do so at planetcritical.com or on the Patreon page. Both links are in the description box below. A huge thank you to the Planet Critical community. It's you who support this project 100% and keep it going week in, week out. So thank you. And thank you all for watching. I hope this was valuable to you in some way, and I will see you next week.